Greetings and salutations. Welcome to episode 112 of Ref the District. I'm Nathan Perry. That's the Stoner. Did I get that right as 112? I think it's 112.
It is 112.
We did the graphics earlier today or yesterday or late yesterday, and I don't even know our own show. I'm Nathan Perry. That's the Stoner. No Trev today. We are live every Wednesday at 7:30 on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. But Trev had something come up, and so he is stepping away for tonight. Don't worry, we've got a full show for you, even with just the two of us. In fact, we got a special guest. Stoner, you want to talk about who's coming to visit?
Yeah, super excited to have John Paul Flame, JP from the Junkies, coming on at 8 o'clock. The news broke at, I don't know what time, right as free agency officially started, that Jacoby Brissett is now a member of the Commanders. So we're going to have JP Flame from the Junkies come on and talk about that and all the free agency moves the Commanders have made.
Always a good time with JP in the house. We, of course, appreciate the Junkies support for the channel. We appreciate your support as well. Everyone already in the chat. We got Bod, we got Michael, we got Doug, we got Yam in the house. I know that Yam was going to have some school. Glad to see that Yam is here. Ethan Davis is back. Good evening.
Ethan,
always
where you been, brother?
Yeah, Ethan showed up, was just like, man, these guys at the New York Giants game. He was just like, ooh, I don't know about these guys. Of course, we are also supported by Don't Sleep Energy. Don't sleep, be great. You can use the code REFTHEDISTRICT at don'tsleepenergy.com and get 10% off your entire order. Whether or not that's the neat swag that we have behind me here or some of the drinks that are behind Stoner, I think they're still sold out of sugar-free. That's how good they are.
That's how good they are. That's right. And I've talked to Mike, who is the owner and proprietor of Don't Sleep, and he said they are getting some sugar-free in, and they're going to have plenty of it. So go there and check them out and get some of that Don't Sleep.
This is a local DMV business, small business. Support them where you can. If you're usually one of those other energy drink people, try out Don't Sleep Energy. As you can see here on if you're watching and not one of our audio listeners, because of course we're on your favorite audio platform afterwards as well. I have created some new graphics. I originally did create them for the three of us, but I had to do a quick audible and create some two box here. But you can actually see the entire run of show now that we have planned for you. Late in the show, we'll be talking about Taylor Heinicke and his legacy here, if that's what you want to call it. As a Washington Commander, we'll be talking about some free agency, specifically Darius Slay, Austin Eckler getting some love there. As Stoner mentioned, Jacoby Brissett signed just hours ago before we went live with this one. So we'll be talking heavily about him. We're going to be talking about free agency as a whole, where the Commanders are now, and everything they've done up to this point, and what we're hoping that they'll do going forward. And then here in the warm-up, sponsored by Don't Sleep Energy, is going to be talking about Jason Wright. If you haven't had a chance, catch out our video interview with Jason Wright that we did just yesterday, dropped it yesterday. Lots of good and fun things in there. Great kind of inspirational stuff. Jason is a very cool guy to be talking to. So now there were some important little Commanders nuggets in there too, Stoner. Do you want to talk about any of those?
Well, first, before we get to that, though, can I just kind of throw a little something out there?
Sure. Throw a wrench into my whole plan.
Well,
Stoner.
no, it's on the same subject, but I do want to get some feedback in how my audio sounds, because I am using this little lavalier mic right now. Because
he doesn't trust me, is what he's saying.
It could sound different. I've done shows where I've been using the little Logicam audio, and you guys never said anything. So yeah, maybe that is true. Yeah. But I was in a different location yesterday when we did that Jason Wright interview. And when I was at that other location, I had to lug all of my equipment to it. I couldn't get out of it. We had to do this interview. And so I left a very important piece of my audio at that location, which is the stand where my mic goes. So I have no stand, and I don't know what I'm going to do. I guess I'll just keep using this wireless mic. The problem is it's wireless, means it's battery powered. But yeah, so I'm worried that in the middle of the show it's just going to die out. But
well, I'm glad that if you're worried about your battery power, that you've spent the last 2 minutes talking about your microphone setup there. Now it is kind of cool.
Jason interview.
Yeah, it is. The Jason Wright thing was pretty neat, right? Like we were very excited about it. Trev showed up a full hour before it.
Right.
I think he got his times mixed up. So it wasn't just because he was super excited, but he was super excited. Ended up showing up, like I said, an hour beforehand. You were elsewhere and you were like, no, gotta make this work. So you're like scrambling to try to find a location. Ended up working out quite well.
It did.
Like I said, it was great that we were able to do that. Thank you, Jason, for spending some time with us. Thank you, Gene Medina, for setting it up for us and making sure we were within the left and right boundaries, which we didn't cross. We try to be good, true professionals. Although I did try to sneak in a couple things there, Stoner.
Yeah, what was the one thing that you tried to sneak in that's got everybody kind of laughing today that we put out there?
That was the Hard Knocks.
Yeah.
There's a lot of information right now saying Hard Knocks. Everyone's looking at the Jets right now, but I kind of try to sneak it in there with, we're talking training camp, and it was just like, these guys were really excited to see how that goes. These guys are especially excited about, whether or not we're going to get Hard Knocks. And then I just pause and look at Jason, and he just finished drinking, and he just kind of gets back and has this big smile on his face.
Hey, look,
I'm a Stoner.
I'm a pretty good reader of people's emotions, and he was hiding. He was like the Cheshire cat that's got something to hide or whatever. He had something to hide there. So yeah, I'm obviously putting words in his mouth, but it looked like it's promising. I'll say that he didn't answer. He didn't say whether or not it was going to happen, but I will say that smile spoke a lot of words to me. So I think there's a really good chance of it. I'll put it this way. We're right now, we're in the middle of March, right? Training camp is June, July.
Yeah. OTAs will be in May, and then June, July is training camps.
You've been part of television production teams. I've been part of television production teams for 10, 20, 30 years. You don't just all of a sudden one day say, okay, we're going to do the Commanders or the Jets or whatever, and then you show up at training camp. There is so much preparation and logistics that goes into it. I think they've already decided.
Yeah, and they're just waiting to announce.
They're waiting to announce, but they're putting in all of the background work. They're getting, all of their footage and their logistics. Like I said, where the people are staying and trucks and, just so much goes into it. So I think they know. And if they do know, Jason knows. Right? Either way. And Absolutely. He had that look. I could get in trouble from Jason and the Commanders for saying this.
I mean, everyone's going to watch the video is probably going to think the same thing. I mean, he just had that look when I said it. It was just like, he can't say. And we've had conversations with Jason off the record where he's kind of teased some things before, right? Like, before a lot of the sales stuff happened, he kind of teased that with us. And he's talked to us directly about, before the team announced the whole, you can wear Redskins, wardrobes and stuff to the game, it's not going to be a problem. He talked to us about that. So we've had that kind of thing with him where I think if we weren't recording, he might have been a little coy with us. Might have thrown a little teaser, but he had Gene in the background, and of course, he knows we're recording and that's going to be put out there. So he definitely seemed like he might be hiding something. Do you think, Stoner, that there was maybe a pitch that he had to go through that you think the team wants to bring that in?
Oh, the team 1,000,000,000% wants something like that. The influx of eyeballs that will come to an organization if you're on Hard Knocks, and what do eyeballs translate into? Good cold green hard cash, cold hard cash, straight cash, homie, as Randy Moss once said. So yeah, I think they absolutely want this. They're still in the middle of this transition, as Jason talked about,
several times,
trying to win back the fan base, the season ticket holders, of getting those good vibes out there about what this organization is doing. So absolutely, they want to be on Hard Knocks so that they can get that message out there to not only this area, but to the entire country. Because let's be fair and let's be honest about this. The Washington organization has a very, very bad reputation throughout the country. Everybody looks at Washington as this dysfunctional organization. So they need to do whatever they can to fix that. And that's one way of doing it, is being on Hard Knocks.
Yeah, he definitely talked about some of that blackout there. Yeah. Well, the Lions have always been like lovable losers, kind of like the Browns have always been kind of like that underdog you just want to cheer for unless you're from the AFC North. Even the Bears or some, people kind of like endear themselves to those teams that just haven't been good for a long time, but are just kind of there. Washington actively gets some hate. Maybe it's this area. Maybe it's just because we're more in tune with those kind of things. And, so I agree with you. I think that there was probably some kind of pitch from Jason. And if they don't get it, what do you think about potentially, as TJ here mentions, I'd rather see the mid-season Hard Knocks?
I suppose, but let me ask you this. Let me just ask you, Nathan, and I'll ask the people who are in the chat here with us as well. But I watched every episode of the Lions Hard Knocks. I watched 0 minutes of any. What was it? The Cardinals were in season this year?
Honestly couldn't tell.
Don't even know, right? So I
think it was the Cardinals.
I think it was the Cardinals.
Yeah. I'm with Michael on this one. Michael here saying, I hold the opinion that Hard Knocks is a distraction.
I probably agree with that.
I'm with Michael on this one. I know you, Stoner, and Trev. I was literally putting that in there because we had talked about it before Jason came on, and I knew that was something we wanted. So I wanted to sneak it in before getting a different question in. And I think we did great with that. But I personally, I will watch, like Yam here says, Yam agrees with it. I agree it's a distraction, but I will never turn more Commanders content selfishly. Absolutely. I don't want Hard Knocks here, but if they do Hard Knocks, if they're gonna have Hard Knocks, I'm getting an HBO subscription or bumming it from somebody else, and I'm watching every single bit of it. I will sit down with EP, we'll get some popcorn, and we're gonna eat it up. And it looks like we might be there because Jason didn't say no. He didn't tell us yes, but he definitely looked like the cat who ate the bird.
And maybe, just maybe, you might see, in the background of some of them shots, your boys, Nathan or Stoner or Trev, who knows? Maybe we'll be at training camp and we'll get a little cameo, whatever, who knows? Maybe. Could happen.
We'll see where things go. Not just Hard Knocks. There were some other things we talked about there. What other would be a highlight for you as we continue here with the Jason Wright conversation?
Yeah, there was quite a bit that people maybe don't realize about Jason. We didn't know a whole lot about Jason before he got here, right? But the part about him being a former player and how him being a guy who is basically on the edge of the roster year after year until he finally stuck after about 4 years, and then becoming a team captain and being the NFL players rep, and how that prepared him for this career that he has now, from being the player. So he understands from the player's perspective. So there was that I thought was fascinating. I thought super fascinating was the civil rights history in his family. We didn't know that. There are some civil rights acts that were passed by law that have his family name on them, like his grandfather on his mother's side. I'm probably botching that, but I'm saying something to that effect. His name is on a civil rights act that was passed by Congress. And then now that's Jason's middle name. Gallium, I believe, is the exact name.
And he talked about that. Yeah.
That's really cool. And he talked about all about that. He talked about the most important part for me of that entire discussion was when he said, we understand the mistakes we've made as an organization. We don't take that lightly. We're not sitting back here and ignoring what people are saying about the organization. And I thought that was really important. And they know it's hard, and they work on it every day, and they try very hard every day to make everybody proud of this organization. I thought that was a huge admission when he said that. He says, we understand we make mistakes and people are not really happy with it, but we're always trying. And we have the fans and the alumni. We have all their interests at heart to make this organization better. I thought those are some pretty big admissions.
Yeah. And he talks a lot about how much work they've been trying to do to get past. And there was a little bit of shirking of the responsibilities, which is fair in some regards because, they are inheriting the team that's there. What did he tell us? There's like 80% turnover.
80% turnover since he's been there.
Just an incredible number. That's ridiculous. Like that's a whole new company at that point.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so understandably, he's like the people who are working here now. We've talked about this. We've talked about it with Julie as well. Julie Donaldson is the people there now are not the people who were there during a lot of when these scandals were about. So like you can't like as much vitriol as there is surrounding the owner, and we couldn't talk about the team sale. That was a big no-go from the start. But he did talk about the transition. You mentioned the transition early. He did talk about the transition, the fact that they are trying to sell the team. They are going through a transition and, having these people who he believes are quality leaving for other organizations. He's just like, he wants them here a little bit longer. But they really did have a lot to overcome. And yes, they have made mistakes, and he owned up to some of those mistakes. He talked about how some of them, he kind of expects it because he asks so much of his, of his team, not the players, even though he did say he asks a lot of the players as well, but the people who we don't see and interact with, they have a lot on their plate. So sometimes they're going to miss, something. Yeah. And sometimes that something is a big something to us, but in the grand scheme of things, it's very little something. So
yeah, absolutely. And one other thing that I wanted to bring up that he said that I thought was very telling also is that he said, this is a burn the bridge year. This is we're crossing that bridge and we're burning everything behind us. We're all in for this year. This is a make or break year on the field. Not talking about off the field anymore. Now he's talking about on the field. This is the big year. If they don't do it this year, then you're going to just see a huge amount of turnover. Probably not just on the field side, but in the front office and on the business side maybe as well. But this is a big year for this organization. We as fans have been saying that for a while, that this is a big year because this is now year 4. This is new ownership coming in. We don't know what they're going to do. You have no way to predict that. But he said that. He said this is a make or break year. They're all in. That's kind of a big deal, I thought.
I agree. There were some things that we didn't get to talk about. I'm going to hit one of them here. Gus Bus's comment from earlier. I would love for them to address the quality of life team rankings in Hard Knocks. We actually had that as a question, but we were running long, didn't get to it. But I wanted to hear from him. I mean, kind of talked about some of the mistakes that they've had and where they want to improve. But we didn't get to touch necessarily on their survey because I do think that's important. I think it's like he is the team president and he was brought on to kind of fix these things, and to see us ranked so low. Yeah. Strength coach, the only A in the group. And I think we were 32 out of 32 on overall rankings. And so it's just like, this is, that's important. And thankfully they've made some moves in free agency. And he talked about how, the teams trying to be more aggressive in free agency. But you would like to see a little bit more in that part.
And don't get it twisted also is that we're not shills for the team, right? We're not mouthpieces for the team, but we're not going to go out there and when we have Jason Wright on our show, we're not going to disrespect him and say all the things, because we've got a lot of responses to our tweets and on our YouTube page about, why didn't you ask him this or that about certain scandals or what? We're not going to be disrespectful to the man. because the man has never been disrespectful to us, and he hasn't been disrespectful to the fans directly. They've made mistakes, like we said, but we're not going to do that. I thought we did ask him a couple of tough questions, not tough, but questions where they were tough subjects for him. So I think that was a good way for him to be able to connect with fans, was through this particular interview, because little back padding that I like to do, but for this show, this is the first time Jason has ever done a fan podcast on video. I think he's been on an audio podcast before, but he's never done one with a fan podcast. So I think that's a big deal. That's also part of their, as an organization, their willingness to connect more with the fans is part of their change and their way of doing better as an organization. So I think that's all a really big deal about what's going on over there in Ashburn.
Yeah. Shout out to our buddy Andy. That is one of the fan cast that Jason Wright's been a part of. So definitely big shout out to our man across the pond there. I missed this one earlier, so I'm gonna live up to it. I see the Wolves, and we're gonna give some howling in there as Gregory, number 14, baby, with 3 wolf heads. We're definitely gonna be talking about the team makeup, especially with Jacoby Brissett here in a little bit. I was vamping a little bit on this Jason Wright topic. I don't know if you have anything more, or can we move to free agency and we'll just welcome JP in when
he pops in? Yeah, let's move on. I do want to say that I appreciated Jason coming on, and I hope that we were able to convey a lot of those messages from the organization to the fans with that interview. Couldn't get to every topic, like you said. We're not going to touch on some of that toxic stuff because it's disrespectful to do that to Jason at this point. And we're moving on past that. But I appreciated Jason doing that and the organization. It was a big deal for us, and hopefully those who watched it, people here in the chat, have seen it and that they got something out of it.
Yeah. And next time we have him on, because I do believe there will be a next time, we'll try to make sure if we have an advance notice. We only had like 4 days or so with this one, but we will maybe solicit for some questions, try to get what you want from that interview, and try to ask some of those things. Last note on Jason before we move on to the game is how important it is for this organization to be a part of the DMV. So I kind of one of the other things I kind of snuck in there was, we're talking season tickets, and I snuck in, where the next stadium's going to be, like where is the commute going to be, for planning purposes. And obviously he can't tell us, but one of the things that he talked about, and it's kind of a through line in a lot of his responses, is the DMV. So a lot of people feel like with a new owner, or Dan just being the butthead that he is, going to take the team elsewhere. I don't think that's happening.
That didn't happen.
That definitely does not sound the way that it's going to go. It sounds like this team is here to stay, which we love, which is great for us, and I'm looking forward to it. And I hope that the relationships, and this is something you need to kind of keep an eye on with your local politics, is who's working with the Commanders, because that's likely where the next stadium's going to go.
Yep.
So whether or not that's Virginia, Maryland, or DC, you hear a lot more smoke coming from DC now that Dan Snyder is going to be out of the picture. The mayor's back on board. All of a sudden, people are like, it wouldn't be bad to have a stadium right here. So we'll see how all that goes. It definitely seems like the team is trying to move towards that. So I agree with Gus Bus, RFK or bust. I would love to see it back there. Would love to see it back there. I don't drive. I'm in a bus that passes there when I go into the office, and it just gives me goosebumps going by it. Would love to see it. So we'll see how that goes as we come up here. It's going to be the game. We're going to be talking free agency, talk about that Jacoby Brissett pickup, and a couple names out there that our guys here are very interested in. I'm sad that Trev's not here for one of them, because he was the big proponent for one of those names. And so we'll see how that goes. So of course, we have JP from the Junkies coming on as well. All that's going to come up during the game.
The game is brought to you by Pacers Running Stores. Pacers has 5 stores in Northern Virginia and DC. For the best running footwear, apparel, and gear, just stop by or schedule a virtual fitting with the best running experts in the business. Pacers Running exists to help as many people as possible through running. For every run, it's Pacers Running.
Pacers Running has you covered. Stoner, I'm just going to ask you to just kind of move yourself over the other direction for now.
Yeah, so JP gets
again, I created these graphics. I asked Stoner for our audio listeners if he wanted me to redo some of these visuals just for the two of us while we're waiting for JP. He said, nah, it's going to be fine. But I didn't think you guys really wanted to listen to any more Jason Wright talk. I mean, if you really want to listen to this conversation, which is a great conversation, head on over to our video here on YouTube and check it out. We posted it just yesterday. I know a lot of you have already seen it, so some great stuff, and keep up there. But it's time to move on to some actual football talk.
Yes, sir.
And to start with this is, Washington has tried to make some moves early on. And this is something, not to continue with the Jason talk, this is something Jason, acknowledged. I don't know. I can't remember if it was on camera or off camera where they talked about how aggressive and that it might be a shock to some fans. But
no, it was on
they
camera.
they have kind of gone out there early on. Some people, I've kind of seen this. I don't know if you've seen this, Stoner, some rumblings that they're being too aggressive with mid-tier guys. They don't need to sign these mid-tier guys this early in free agency. What do you say about that particular topic?
Yeah, my philosophy is you focus on who you want and you go get them, whatever it takes, whether it's a trade or it's a signing or whatever. You don't react to the market, which is what they did last year. And that's why they ended up with those 2 guards that they ended up with. They reacted to the market and they waited, and it was too late by then. This year, they're setting the market like they did with Daron Payne. And we haven't even talked about Daron Payne signing on the show yet, have we? Or maybe we did last week. I can't remember.
We haven't done it. We haven't had it on a Wednesday show yet because it happened just this weekend.
Yeah. So they went out with Daron Payne, and they said before any other team was able to set the market with the defensive linemen, because there are plenty of defensive linemen available, they said, we're signing Daron Payne. You guys figure it out after that, because this is what we want to do, and so we don't have to sit there and wait and pay a lot of money. That's what they did with some of the linemen. That's what they did with the linebackers. Could they have waited another week to get Cody Barton at linebacker? Maybe, but maybe they lose him then. Or maybe they have to pay more at that point. Maybe they could have paid less. Who knows? You want Cody Barton to be your linebacker or backup linebacker, whatever, go get him. And just don't wait until either he's gone or you've priced out, you're not willing to pay that much. Then you're going out and getting John Bostic, right, just before training camp or during the middle of the season or whatever. That's what bad teams do, is they react to what's going on. Washington this year is proactive, and I think that's a huge difference than the way they have been, or at least the way they were last year. 2 years ago, they did the William Jackson thing, didn't work out, whatever. They did the Ryan Fitzpatrick, didn't work out. They did the Curtis Samuel the year before, or maybe that was 2 years ago, I should say. But the last couple of years, they have been reactive, and they need to be proactive. So I'm happy with that. Do you see that there's any issue with signing B-level guys? I think you called them in our video.
Yeah, they're B tier, maybe even upper C tier. Unfortunately, it is looking like these guys are going to start. And I don't have a problem with Wylie out at right tackle, which is where it's looking like it's going to be from the reports. Is Wylie's going to be right tackle. Cosme's going to be your right guard. The question now becomes with the Nick Gates, where I've heard today I believe from JP Finley, that they're looking at Nick Gates at center.
Right.
So now are you using Chris Paul out as left guard? And so he graded pretty well at center. Maybe you don't want a whole bunch of B tier, C, upper C tier guys starting, but you do need to go out there and get the guys that you think you can, use and start winning. And so I think that part is important. So whether or not what's going to happen with that, I still think there's some things going on. As Gus Bus mentions, they did re-sign Tyler today. We don't know what's going on with Chase Roulier. So
we don't know officially.
Yeah.
He's gone. I'm just telling you right now, he's gone. Unless he's willing to come back on a very team-friendly deal. We're not going to see Chase Roulier, unfortunately. His cap hit is just too big. It's too much. And I don't know if it's better that he's a June 1st guy or not, whatever. He's either going to have to restructure on a very team-friendly deal or he's going to be on another squad next year. Because you've got basically two centers now, right? You've got Nick Gates and you've got Tyler Larson. So, yeah, I think he's probably gone.
A surprise to me. I thought that this was going to happen, but it was I didn't think that they were going to go through with it, and that was a change they made today. And that was J.D. McKissick getting cut. What are your thoughts on J.D.? This is a guy who signed or was going to sign with Buffalo, then realized that the Commanders were like, "No, we want you," so he ditches Buffalo, a Super Bowl contender, to come back to Washington last year, gets injured second year in a row with a neck injury, a very serious injury there. And now he's off the team once again.
Yeah, unfortunately, the injuries, it was the same season-ending injury 2 years in a row with his neck. So I can understand why they had to let him go. Man, when he's healthy, he was a difference maker. Maybe that's a little too strong. But he was a very effective third down back. Yeah. And he made a lot of plays. For some reason, he couldn't keep his feet when he was out there running. He tackled himself quite a bit, but he made plays, and he was an important part of their rushing attack or their third down attack, their passing attack. So, I mean, that 1 year with, was it with Alex Smith? What do you have, like 70
almost
or
80 catches? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's insane for a third down back, and he didn't play for second down. So he was good. It's time to move on, unfortunately, with the injuries and all that.
Yeah. Good. I really appreciated him coming back to Washington, especially, again, shirking Buffalo to do so. But with his contract, with his injuries, you have Brian Robinson, who's come on to be your lead back. Now Gibson is in that third down back role. There's rumblings that they're looking elsewhere, which we'll be talking about. But first, I want to bring on our esteemed guest here, JP from the Junkies. Appreciate you, JP, coming on.
We got like a replay machine here with us.
Strong.
So, JP, we're in the middle of the free agency discussion for the Commanders. Any of the names jump out to you so far for signings or not signings outside Jacoby Brissett, which was just a couple of hours ago?
All right, let's all be honest. The names do not jump out at you, but attacking the offensive line, which I heard you guys talking about before you put me on, necessary. Do we know that these guys are good? Well, they say they're good. The guy from Kansas City makes sense. Eric Bieniemy bringing in one of his guys, and the talking point would be they didn't give up a sack in the Super Bowl. I might have a rebuttal and say, well, Patrick Mahomes is your quarterback, and that makes a big difference, but the guy's a starter. He has some flexibility. I heard you talking about that. They definitely need to upgrade the offensive line, so I like that. In terms of the defensive edition of Dantzler, I don't know. One team didn't like him. Maybe he'll work out here. They definitely have attacked their needs, which I would applaud. The only thing that I don't like is they didn't prioritize quarterback. Now, this is a divisive topic with fans because there are a lot of people who believe in Sam Howell. And I liked him in college. I didn't see him a ton. But it makes me wonder, why did he slip to the 5th round? And people have different reasons as to why he slipped to the 5th round. But if you just play the odds, 5th rounders don't usually work out. And they are putting all their eggs, it seems like, in the Howell basket. I like the addition of Jacoby Brissett if you're looking at that next tier of quarterback. But maybe because they were burned the last 2 years, they didn't go after a top-tier guy. They didn't consider Lamar Jackson, the Aaron Rodgers play, whoever else was out there. Make a play at Daniel Jones. I know that he got signed before. They just weren't interested.
Okay, but along those same lines with Jacoby Brissett, I mean, everybody wants to talk Jacoby Brissett, right? So let's talk Jacoby. He is a mid-tier. He's a C-tier type quarterback, right? But as we've been talking to some people on Twitter back and forth, look, if there was a fair competition, he would probably win the battle in training camp against Sam Howell. Does that preclude Washington from of drafting a quarterback in the first couple rounds? Because obviously they don't believe in Sam.
It certainly doesn't preclude them from doing that.
Yeah.
Look, Bieniemy appears to like Sam Howell, everything that he said. You saw at the introduction of Eric Bieniemy, he seemed to have a good repartee there with Sam Howell. But in the big picture, what does that mean? He didn't draft him. He's inherited Sam Howell, and he's inherited the Sam Howell situation. Eric Bieniemy, and one would think Ron Rivera, want to win games. Who gives you the best opportunity to win games? They seem to be going with Sam Howell. Jacoby Brissett is a guy who, if Sam struggles after 3 games, let's say they start off the year 1-2. Let's say he's got 5 turnovers in 3 games. I could easily see Ron Rivera going to Jacoby Brissett. Does that mean you're going to have a winning season? I doubt it. I personally don't think the prospects of a winning season, this was a team that finished 500, are great with Sam Howell and Jacoby Brissett as your quarterbacks.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jacoby Brissett had some rough years under his belt as far as wins and losses. Pretty efficient passer though, nothing too flashy. He is coming from a team that had a defense and wanted to run the ball, and Ron Rivera wants a defense and to run the ball. How do you feel though Eric Bieniemy is going to make a change to that, whether or not it's for Jacoby Brissett or Sam Howell?
I mean, Bieniemy's familiar with Jacoby Brissett. He's seen him play, I'm sure, a ton of times, probably played against him. So my guess would be that Bieniemy was a big part of the equation of bringing in Brissett beyond Martin Mayhew and Ron Rivera. Couple interesting things. I looked at some numbers on Jacoby Brissett. Let's just work with last season. So got a bunch of starts in Cleveland. If you look at his Pro Football Focus grade, he's up there in the top 10. I think there were 5 guys ahead of him, and it's Joe Burrow, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, and Lamar Jackson. Pretty good company, right? Then I was like, well, let me look at a different metric. Let's look at traditional, old school passer rating. Do you know who he's right next to last year?
Give us a clue. Give us a hint.
Taylor Heinicke.
It was his birthday today.
Whose birthday was it today? We probably saw. I don't know.
Taylor Heinicke.
I did say Taylor Heinicke. Yeah.
Taylor Heinicke. That is where his passer rating is right next to. So Jacoby Brissett finished with an 88.9. Taylor Heinicke was 89.6. Both guys, 12 touchdowns, 6 picks.
Oh, really? Same amount of games?
No, I think
11 games for Jacoby Brissett, and vastly different QBR too. By the way, it was 59.9 for QBR with Jacoby Brissett. Taylor Heinicke was below 50.
Yes, yeah. I mean, but there's so many metrics now that you can look at, but that one kind of jumped out of it. It's like, let me see the neighborhood where he is. And I mean, there's some other guys who, if you look at old school passer, you think Tom Brady was right around there. But let's not get carried away. It's funny. You know, you guys are on social media a lot with Rep the District. On our social media, there was such a huge response to Jacoby Brissett, and overwhelmingly positive, whether it was on our Facebook page, on our Twitter page, Instagram. And That's kind of what people do here in DC. They get all fired up about the backup quarterback. And I think you have to keep it in perspective. He's Jacoby Brissett.
Yeah.
And I think when it all is said and done, I do like the additions this offseason. We can go through it. On paper, they are addressing needs, whether it's at linebacker, corner, offensive line. But they have a whole lot riding on Sam Howell, it seems.
Man, that's a shaky foundation to be riding on.
And look, in the division, it's the same as it was last year, right? You're going to start with Jalen Hurts and the Eagles. They were in the Super Bowl. Now you've got the Cowboys and Dak Prescott. I'm sorry. You can like Sam Howell and say, man, I loved what he did. He beat the Cowboys, but kind of like Dak Prescott more than him. And who would you take, Daniel Jones or Sam Howell? Sam Howell ultimately could prove to be a stud in this league. Maybe 5 years from now, we're saying, man, they got a steal in the 5th round. He's an unbelievable player. He's a franchise quarterback. He's going to be the franchise quarterback for 10 years. But he also could be John Beck.
Yeah. Now you are. I'm not sure where you stand on the quarterback wins. Whether it should be attributed to the quarterback, if team wins should be attributed to the quarterback.
I lean towards that. Some people completely go away from that, but I'm sorry. Good quarterbacks tend to win games.
That guy right there.
Yeah, I'm not. I don't. QB wins are not a thing. Obviously, they play a factor, but I think that you have to look at the full picture, right? Like you brought up the QB rating, right? You got to look at that. Jacoby Brissett, just even with his 59, what someone put it in the chat there, like the 10th highest QBR, 59.9. You mentioned the Pro Football Focus, like he played an efficient game is essentially what he did, but he did not do enough to win. And sometimes efficiency and getting those efficiency, like EPA is another one out there. Where Jacoby Brissett was lights out, especially compared to a guy like Taylor Heinicke, just completely different. But when you look at the record, you're like 4-7. Okay, so he wasn't the reason why they're winning, and you can kind of see this with some QBs who have amazing stats. I mean, how many times did Kirk Cousins throw for 4,000 yards on a losing team? So it's and you had Stafford finally got his Super Bowl victory, but how many years with the Lions was he throwing for 5,000 yards? But how much of that was in garbage time? So I think you need to take a look at the whole picture, and when you're taking into an effect there, because I don't think anyone would really say Stafford's a bad quarterback, but if you look at his QB win-loss record, he's not a good quarterback either. So I think there's more to take into it when it comes to that. And Jacoby Brissett, it's not moving the needle. You're right, for a team that's middle of the pack, and the 8-1 team managed to 17 games. They still managed to go 500. So you two seem pretty dead set that Sam Howell's going to be the starter, and he may or may not lose the job throughout. So is there no faith in Jacoby Brissett kind of holding the water at least, or is this the pickup that's getting you a Caleb Williams next year?
I think to even think about Caleb Williams is a stretch. Only one team is going to have a shot at Caleb Williams. That's the worst team in the league. I don't think the Washington Commanders are going to be the worst team in the league. You mentioned their record last year. They were 500. To me, if you had better quarterback play in just one game, you're in the playoffs. So they weren't far away from that. That's why I wonder about the Sam Howell thing. And here's another thing I think about with Sam Howell. He said himself in that last week when he played against the Cowboys that he hadn't thrown to Terry McLaurin all season long. They weren't even really looking at him. He was like a side field guy, a scout team guy. It wasn't like we were hearing these reports week in and week out. Oh my gosh, Sam Howell is just blowing us away. Then when they move away from Wentz, he gets hurt, whatever. It's Heinicke. Howell's the backup. You still didn't hear anything about Sam Howell. He was close to getting on the field, and it's almost like, all right, they threw him there in the last game, and Ron Rivera's like, oh, well, maybe I can do this, and we can do like the Brock Purdy formula, and we don't need to pay a quarterback all this money. But to me, it feels like a crossing our fingers move. Now, again, I'll preface this by saying I like the guy a lot. He appears to have a lot of talent, and maybe he will be a stud. Maybe they will have a Brock Purdy-like season from Sam Howell. But I've watched football enough to know, and we've seen it with this team to know that a lot of guys fail. Like, it's great to hear these things and have these expectations, but why in the heck did he slip to the 5th round?
Mm. Yeah, I'm a little the game is rigged against him, don't you think? For Brissett, I mean, it's rigged to get Sam Howell everything that he needs or he wants or every chance to be the starting quarterback. He basically has to throw up all over himself to not be the starting quarterback week 1, or obviously injury.
And look, maybe they actually did see a guy who they felt, I mean, if you believe Ron Rivera, who they felt was a guy who was worthy of a much higher draft choice, who slipped for whatever reason, and they were able to pick him in the 5th round. They had already signed Carson Wentz to a lot of money. All right. And they thought, well, we're going to worry about Sam Howell in a couple of years because, look, they thought Wentz was going to be around more than a year. They paid him a lot of money. All right. The Wentz thing blew up in their face, and now they're going to ride with Sam Howell. Maybe with the receivers they have, with an improved offensive line, all of those things, he can be successful. I am just a little skeptical because in the little bit of work that we saw in 19 passes, we saw some great deep balls. We saw some talent. But remember, he also had a terrible interception. Mm-hmm. And people would combat that and say, well, everybody throws interceptions. Well, that is true. Aaron Rodgers himself had double-digit interceptions last year. But what if we see him over 100 passes in 4 games and he has 4 or 5 interceptions, which doesn't necessarily mean he's going to be a failure in his career. He's also a very young quarterback with no experience. Mm-hmm. I'm just saying, if you're trying to get a playoff spot, you're rolling the dice with a 5th rounder. And then Jacoby Brissett, let's be honest, he might be able to beat him out, but you're right, it's probably rigged against him. But Jacoby Brissett, let's just base it on last year, 4-7, as you said, and whether you attribute all of it to a quarterback, 50% to a quarterback, 10% to a quarterback, he wasn't winning a ton of games in Cleveland, so I wouldn't expect it to be that different here in Washington. Like, let's say Sam Howell, for whatever reason, tore his ACL in the offseason. So he's not able to play. Jacoby Brissett is your starter. Mm-hmm. Is this a playoff team?
Whew, now you're putting me on the spot. I hadn't even thought of that. Man, is this a playoff team with Jacoby Brissett starting from week 1? Probably not.
I will tell you, I would say probably not.
Yeah, probably not.
It's interesting that you guys would go that route. I mean, this is going to be the 4th, this is 4th team schedule, right? So it's the bottom schedule.
The last place schedule,
the last place schedule. This is Jacoby Brissett. Essentially, you're saying Jacoby Brissett's worse than Taylor Heinicke, right? Because Taylor Heinicke nearly got Washington to the playoffs. We just talked about that, and the fact that he got benched and Wentz got put in. Wentz looked awful against Cleveland. You know, that's really how Washington's season unraveled. Although I will always point out Taylor Heinicke was 1-3-1 in games that mattered when they had to win to get into the playoffs. So now Jacoby Brissett's not better than Taylor Heinicke?
I do think he is better. And when you put it like that, if I use that logic,
you moved him.
Wins. But we know it doesn't work out like that.
There's a lot of variables.
And we talked about it. If you look back on Taylor Heinicke's season, it's like he had a magic wand for a while. I mean, you think about some of the throws. I was there at the Vikings game when he threw into triple coverage, and somehow Terry McLaurin comes down with it. Referee knocks over somebody. Like, there was some magic there with Taylor Heinicke for a while, and eventually it ran out.
So let's move on from Jacoby Brissett, and let's talk about a couple other guys here who are available now, and one of them being, of course, Austin Eckler. And he's been rumored, we're not just kind of throwing a name out there, but he's been rumored to possibly be in a trade to Washington.
Yeah, he's on the trade block, and Commanders are interested, I think.
So that's what the rumor is, right? Is that a good fit for Washington? Austin Eckler, he's going to be 29-year-old running back who's had like 1,300 touches in the last 5 years. Is that a good fit in Washington?
Sounds like you're leading the witness for me to say no.
I definitely led the witness on that.
But I'm going to say yes. He's an amazing player. Don't you want? Wow. I would think you just want as many really good players as possible. And he's uber talented. I don't know how realistic it is. I have seen their name on a list. I find it strange that he wants out.
Yeah.
Hasn't he been thriving there?
Yeah, and he had more touchdowns. I think I saw the stat somewhere, or he had about as many touchdowns as Washington had.
Yeah, he had 18 touchdowns, and Washington had 24.
Yeah,
he had 18 by himself. So yeah, you're right. I led the witness, and then the witness turned it around on me, and now I might be back on the I mean, if
why are you anti? Just because of the age?
Yeah,
I understand a lot of running backs break down, but has he shown any signs of breaking down?
No, I don't think so. I think he's been very healthy, I believe,
and he's been lightly used too. I mean, since starting, since 2017, he's only had 800 carries.
Look at his catches too. He's had like 1,300 touches in the last 5 years or whatever. That's a lot of getting hit.
He's had 1,100, about less than 1,200 touches in the last 6 seasons, right? 6 seasons worth of play.
I would just think that Eric Bieniemy is the new offensive coordinator. He likes some of the pieces they have, right? You have to like the receivers that they have. But if you look at Kansas City, now this year they didn't have premier wide receivers, but they have a Hall of Fame tight end. They had, they've had guys like Tyreek Hill and still had guys who were super speedy. I would think he wants as many toys as possible. Yeah. And he's certainly familiar with Austin Eckler when the Chiefs play them twice a year. So I just think if you can assemble as much top-tier talent, it's not like the NBA and where it's simple, like go get one of the top 5 guys and you'll be one of the top teams. But at the same time, if you can have an offense with premier playmakers, I think you go ahead and do that.
The problem I have with this is a position that is it's undervalued, and properly so. Like, I mean, you got if you're looking at Kansas City from last year, Pacheco was a 7th rounder and ended up being their leading rusher. And so you don't necessarily need to go out and trade assets for a guy going into his 7th year when you have similar skill set or can find a similar skill set. I'm maybe not getting 18 touchdowns from a guy on just a limited number of touches, but he had 311 touches last year. So maybe you're not getting 18 touchdowns from that, but I do think like you can find somewhere else. Like
it's almost a luxury, right? So yes, I'd love to have the new toy. You guys have been talking about it though. If you're running the show, you're the GM right now, you're Marty Mayhew. What are you looking at right now pre-draft? Or are you kind of content with what they've done, adding a couple offensive linemen, adding a linebacker, adding a corner, re-signing a couple guys? Are you content or are you still making moves?
For me, I'm always making moves. You're always trying to upgrade as much as you possibly can. Just I would sign 3 or 4 more offensive linemen and let them fight it out in camp and try and figure it out. But obviously you can't do that with salary cap issues, but for sure I would like them to get a couple more offensive linemen and corners. You can't have enough of those guys.
That's honestly where I'm going. Is I'm not going to spend it on a running back. I'm going to be spending it on the big boys in the middle there, the trenches, either side. I'm somebody who wants them to go out and get more pass rushers, regardless of where you feel Chase Young is or Montez Sweat is, or they just signed F.A. Obata, again. So you can never have too many people who are going to take down the opposing quarterback. That's just, to me, that's the second most important thing in the game. Your first most is your quarterback. Looks like we're settled on Howell and Jacoby Brissett. So the next thing we need is people who are going to go after the quarterback. So Jonathan Allen, you locked up Daron Payne. Maybe he's going to get his, double-digit sacks again. But line me up some good defensive edge rushers and protect the quarterback. That's what.
Well, wait a second. You guys have given up on Montez Sweat and Chase Young setting the all-time sack record for a duo.
And
they might have given that up.
What did they have that year? They're trying to set the record like 9. 7. Yeah, I mean, because Chase only had 1.5. I don't remember how many Montez had, but yeah, I mean, money-wise, you have to.
To be honest, it's a big question. I know on our show, like EB seems like he's completely out on Chase Young. But what if? This is a big what if. What if right now and for several weeks leading up to training camp, that guy is busting his balls to become the best defensive end in the game. Okay? He's on a mission, and he comes back and he shows you what he showed you in college. He shows you the reason he was drafted number 2 over a guy like Justin Herbert, which will always haunt this team if he doesn't give you any production. But yes, you can always use more pass rushers, but what if you actually get Chase Young with double-digit sacks?
Yeah, that's a difference maker. You can't let difference makers go, regardless of their price.
Nathan doesn't buy it.
No, yeah. I don't. I mean, I think Chase Young is primed for another breakout or a bounce back season, wherever you want to call it. And great if he gets double-digit sacks this year. You just cannot have, to me, enough pass rushers. You're probably looking at, if we don't see Montez Sweat get signed, before the season, then it's unlikely he's going to be with Washington next season. He's going to hit the open market and go somewhere else. So why not load up and get ready for his replacement? He's going to be another Preston Smith, another Brian Arakopo, right? Someone who was taken high by Washington, goes somewhere else and plays well enough to be around in the league for a while. That's what Montez Sweat's shaping up to be. I've said that really Chase Young's shaping up to be the next Clowney, right where he was picked, impact guy, just couldn't stay on the field and just makes good plays, but is that number 2 guy. That's probably where he might end up, so why not, again, load up with somebody who's not F.A. Obata or Casey Tuhill, which aren't bad guys, but they're Jags, right? They're just another guy. You need difference makers. So go out and get yourself a difference maker.
Well, in theory, Chase Young's supposed to be that guy. So he's got to put up or shut up this year.
Yeah. And I'm with you, JP. I know I've heard you on your show talk about the Daron Payne signing, and that you were kind of against it, not against the player. We all know what a stud he is, but what that does to your salary cap looking towards the future when you have that Montez Sweat and that Chase Young. You can't pay this year. The cap hits for those guys are in the $60 million range, and it's only going to go up because Montez and Chase are going to get long-term deals, whether it's here or whether it's another team. I thought they should have let Daron Payne go or trade, whatever, so that they could sign Montez and or Chase in the future, because that's where we like to talk about defensive tackles, but defensive ends, that's where the wreaking havoc on the opposing team comes from, is the D ends. We talk about it all the time. The most important player on the team is the quarterback. Second most is the left tackle. Third most, edge rusher. The most important player on the defense for sure. So I was with you on that, because they're not going to be able to sign Sweat and Chase coming up in the future. They just can't.
Right. So maybe, look, we don't know what they're planning on doing in the draft, and it might be a best players available situation, but maybe they attack that in the draft and get an edge rusher with the 16th pick with their first round pick. We don't know. But kind of my philosophy, you're right. You listen to the show. Nothing against Payne. I mean, Payne was their best defensive player last year, arguably. I mean, he had the most sacks. He was an absolute stud. But it just seems like that's a lot of money into the defensive line. And I'll just keep it simple, kind of going back to what we were talking about, quarterbacks with wins. All right, Aaron Donald may be exception, but how many interior defensive linemen win Super Bowls for you? Like, that you're thinking about, man, they won that Super Bowl because of him. No. You think Chiefs won the Super Bowl because Patrick Mahomes. Why'd the Rams win it? Okay, Aaron Donald did make some big key plays, particularly at the end, but it's because Matthew Stafford and Cooper Kupp. It's an offensive league now. Now, occasionally a guy like Von Miller will wreak havoc. You were talking about edge rushers. The Broncos won with Peyton Manning, but mostly because of the Super Bowl. But it just seems like a lot of money invested into the defensive line. And especially when, let's say Montez this year, let's say he has the breakout year. Let's say Chase gives you 8 or 9 sacks and Montez goes off for 14. Now you got to pay him big bucks, but can you afford to pay him big bucks?
Yeah, definitely not. You won't be able. Not if he gets 14 sacks. You're not going to be able to pay him $25 million.
Unless you're committed to just have a quarterback room where you're paying like $5 million or less. I don't know what Jacoby Brissett got, but I know it's not a ton, and I think Howell's making less than $1 million.
Yeah, I think 1 year, $7 million can be up to 10 is what he's looking at for Jacoby Brissett, if I recall the numbers. And obviously, Sam Howell's making 5th round rookie,
like $800,000 or something.
He's barely surviving by NFL standards. A lot of people point to the 49ers kind of building their team very kind of similarly. They've got a lot of money. They just signed Hargrave to just a little bit cheaper deal than what Daron Payne. They've been to the NFC Championship over the last several years. Why can't Washington kind of replicate that kind of build?
I guess they can. If you point out they can, it's just more difficult. And let's say Sam Howell doesn't work out, right? Let's say Sam Howell doesn't work out, and let's go with Montez and Chase actually showing you that they are studs. Well, in my opinion, let's say you can't get Caleb Williams. I haven't looked at free agent quarterbacks next year, but you're gonna have to go out and get a quarterback. All right, it's not gonna be Jacoby Brissett. It's not gonna be Sam Howell. Let's say Sam Howell busts this year, or you just know he's not gonna be the guy. Now the likelihood is you're gonna have a new owner and new coach, but you're probably gonna have to go out and get a quarterback, and that's not gonna be cheap. It's not going to be cheap.
Yeah, so one of the things is free
here with Lamar Jackson, right?
Yeah, I was about to bring him up because I was like, franchise quarterbacks are never free agents, right? But now you have a free agent. Yeah,
plays on the franchise tag this year,
and
he's out there again next year. Sam Howell started 7 games for Washington. Jacoby Brissett started 10. They finished, 6-11. Well, you're going to need some money to get a guy like Lamar Jackson or whoever else is available. So that's kind of why I'm against the Daron Payne thing, because it just seems like a lot of money invested in that defensive line.
Yeah. And now also you've got Darius Slay, who is available. Surprise cut by the Eagles. Maybe not surprised because of their salary cap situation, but still, he's now available. I don't know what he's going to cost. Probably a lot because he still is pretty much in his prime. Would you like to see Darius Slay here in Washington, assuming they can fit it in the cap?
Sure, why not? It's kind of my Austin Eckler theory, right? Bring in as much premier talent as possible. Why would you be against bringing in top-level talent?
Well, the theory on this one, that I haven't studied it, but the theory on this one is that he's a man corner and Jack Del Rio doesn't play a man type offense. He plays
You're looking at the failure of William Jackson III,
exactly.
And you're seeing this run over and over again.
Yeah, exactly. That's what, I'm not smart enough or in tune enough with that, but that's what people are saying is that he wouldn't fit Jack Del Rio's system.
Yeah, I heard something statistically about man versus zone in the NFL, and I don't have the percentages in front of me, but every team in the league plays predominantly zone. So even if you have a man corner, they are very familiar with zone. My theory on William Jackson is he just wasn't as good as what they thought he was. It wasn't a man zone thing. That's an easy excuse. He's been playing
That's
football.
The agent's excuse, right?
He's
That's
been playing football his whole life. And in high school and college and then the pros, he played both man and zone. He may have had a preference, but it turns out he wasn't very good.
Right. Or he got his money and he was set.
Albert Hainsworth there.
Yeah, I'm good.
So I would always be for, like, besides salary cap implications, because again, going back to Daron Payne, you want as many good players as possible. So he's one of your best players. Okay, you resign him. That's not like I'm against him being part of the team. I just worry about those salary cap implications.
Yeah.
And to Nathan's point, going back to Eckler, same thing is like, yes, he would be great on the field, but maybe there's too much value to bring him in when you have to deal with the salary cap and the implications.
Yeah, salary cap, I feel like, and this is kind of what we all go by here, you can outrun the cap. You're eventually going to have to pay. I mean, Cleveland's was able to, push away Deshaun Watson's, hit this year, but then they're going to have it next year, and they're going to have to keep kind of moving pieces there.
Well, look at the Eagles.
Yeah, and the Eagles. Yeah,
I'm sure the Eagles would love to run it back, right? If I'm the head coach or the GM of the Philadelphia Eagles, and we're in the Super Bowl and we're close to winning it all, I'm like, let's run it back with these guys. And you're seeing defections and guys lost. I mean, Darius Slay is a key player on that team. So they're going to be a different team because of the salary cap, and they have to prepare to give Jalen Hurts a ton of money.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
it's going to have to be a big payday.
He's going to get all the money.
Unlike Jones, though, I think Hurts is actually worth it. I was hoping that the Giants were going to pay Jones even more to kind of hamstring them with a mediocre QB. I think Jalen Hurts is. I don't think he's always going to be an MVP candidate, but I do think that he's going to be a good QB for the Eagles. Jacoby Brissett, Sam Howell, going back to them. Where do you mentioned you're taking Dak Prescott, Jalen Hurts. You said even Daniel Jones over these two. Is that what I remember hearing there, JP?
I think that you have to put Daniel Jones ahead of these two. Daniel Jones had a good year. He won a playoff game. So we can say he's a mediocre quarterback, and you're probably right overall. But if you look at the last couple of years, Daniel Jones cut his turnovers, which was his biggest problem. Does he put up gaudy numbers? Certainly not with passing, but if you throw in the rushing ability, I think he's certainly better than the unknown. Sam Howell's an unknown. In theory, Sam Howell could be the best quarterback in the division, right? But would you bet on that? Would you bet on Sam Howell to be better than Dak Prescott?
No.
Maybe you're going to bet on better than Daniel Jones, but I saw what Daniel Jones did. We know that they have a good coach in the Giants. They already brought in Darren Waller, right? So they're upgrading the weapons for Daniel Jones. We'll see what they do in the draft, but if you're the New York Giants, you're thinking, okay, we're committed to Daniel Jones. They're going to kind of try to do what the Eagles did. Let's give him some toys. So they're going to try and get better receivers, which they didn't have. They obviously upgraded a tight end. I'm sure they're going to try and bolster their offensive line. And yes, I would bet on Daniel Jones to have a better year than Sam Howell. I think you'd be a fool. It's more, again, it's a crossing fingers hope. I hope Sam Howell is better.
Smart money would be on Daniel Jones. Sure.
Yeah. And look, I hope I'm wrong. Let's hope that Sam Howell throws 40 touchdown passes and 5 interceptions.
Oh,
right. Let's hope that happens.
Yeah.
But what is the likelihood that a 5th round pick who has 19 passes in the NFL and 1 start, a guy who you never heard anything about all season until really the last week of the season, is going to have this fairy tale season? It would be great. It would be awesome. But I think we need to be realistic and prepared for a young quarterback who's going to have highs and lows in the league if they're committed to playing him week after week after week. Because I think when you have a Jacoby Brissett, if he starts off slow, they'll make the move. Does Ron have time to have another losing season just to play a kid?
Not if there's a new owner.
I don't care if it was the same owner.
Right.
It's season number 4.
Yeah.
Like we were talking about Chase Young put up or shut up. Ron's got to put up or shut up.
Yeah.
All right. Snuck into the playoffs in year 1. Good story. 7-9. All right. Losing season 2, season 3 hit 500. He said before the season that year 3 was going to be the year that you saw a big difference. Did you see it? I didn't.
Yeah, right. And when in our interview with Jason Wright yesterday, he talked about, Jason Wright was really specific about it. He said, look, we're burning the bridges behind us. This is the year. Everything comes down to this year. We're going for broke. We're building this roster up, and this is going to be it. So that was the first time I kind of heard anybody from the organization say that this is the make or break year for Washington. So I thought that was a pretty big statement. Fans, we kind of all knew that it was a make or break year, but that was the first time we heard anything from the organization to say that.
Yeah, it was also, by the way, on booking Jason Wright. I think on the Junkies, he's been on maybe twice.
Yeah.
We had him on at the very beginning, and we thought we had this friendship, and then nothing.
Nothing. Yeah.
He did give me an endorsement on the book, though. He was very nice to write like a little blurb. And I don't.
Oh yeah, that is true.
I don't even think he even knew anything about the show. He just wrote a couple nice sentences. I was like, oh, that's pretty cool.
It sounds like they're pretty in tune with it. That was the conversation we had before going and recording. Was that they do keep up with you guys? And,
they listen
and listen. So
he sends an occasional text.
Oh, okay.
I won't tell you the topics he texts about.
Right, we can figure it out.
They're not usually the Commanders' topics.
Oh, okay.
Well, JP, we appreciate you jumping on. This is JP Flame from the Sports Junkie. You can catch him, of course, live every morning on the radio or on the Odyssey app, right?
Odyssey app, NBC Sports Washington. Lots of ways to follow the Junkies. Appreciate it. And look, you guys, I think I was on with you about a year ago, maybe before. I don't even know when you started. Maybe it was a couple of years. I've lost track of time. You guys are doing fantastic, man. Keep having fun. Keep doing it.
Appreciate you.
Appreciate that, JP. Thank you. Thank you for saying that.
All right. You have a great night. When we come back for the cool down, it's going to be our goodbyes to Taylor Heinicke. JP, you got anything for Taylor before you go?
Pylon play, brother. I mean, when you think of Taylor Heinicke, the first thing you're going to think about is that playoff game and the dive. That guy, I mean, that's why so many fans loved him. So forget about, some of the bad passes and some of the statistics. Dude, the guy's like a folk hero that came in there and almost won a playoff game against Tom Brady. That's the number one thing I think people are going to remember him for.
Absolutely. Probably going to be the tops on lots of people's lists. We're looking forward to hearing from you in the comments. Go ahead and let us know your favorite Taylor Heinicke moment. We'll get to those in the cool down. Thanks again, JP. You have a great night.
See you guys.
The cool down is brought to you by Manscaped. Ever since my Nathan started using their products, I can't cool down. Fellas, trust me. Go to Manscaped right now and get 20% off and free shipping by using the code REF. Your ladies will appreciate you. Now back to Trev, Stoner, and my Manscaped man, Nathan.
Manscaped.com. Use the code REF. Get yourself 20% off and free shipping over there at manscaped.com. Just got the lawnmower 2.0, right? The nose one. Oh,
Shoot,
yeah.
I forgot to bring it.
You forgot to bring it.
Yeah.
That one is money. The first one, okay. I wasn't really overly fond. Still brought up the regular hair clippers. This one is money. Takes care of everything. Make yourself nice and groomed. So make sure you go and get that for yourself. We're talking Taylor Heinicke right now. HT, by the way, shout out. Good to see you back in here. I can't cool down, Nathan. Yam had to leave. Appreciate you, Yam. Sorry that we took so long with those other segments there, but we are ready to talk about it.
Bye to Taylor.
Well, he also said just up here that he had to head to class. Gus Bus with some big praise. Thanks, Ref the District, the natural successor to the Junkies.
Hey,
we appreciate that. Some big props.
Problem is they're going to be around forever.
They will. So we will just be the rivals at some point. We are looking to continue pushing this channel. Of course, your guys' support is a big reason why we're able to do that kind of stuff. So Taylor Heinicke, no longer employed by the Washington Commanders, a move that you and I both said needed to happen.
Yeah.
This is, and this is not dogging him. We know that there's a lot of people in the hive like EP here who's crying, that he's gone. A lot of people are very upset about it because they liked him. Some people looked at the Jacoby Brissett numbers and are like, we're letting Taylor Heinicke go and taking on some guy who's costing just as much and is not Taylor Heinicke.
Yeah.
Here's the thing: for this team to grow and for Taylor Heinicke to grow and to prove that he belongs in this league, not just here at Washington, because I do think that I think he's already done that, but to the league, to everybody else, to the other fan bases, he needed to go somewhere else.
Oh yeah. Absolutely. And I got no problem with him leaving. Let's kind of just look at the facts first, not necessarily stats. I mean, stats are facts, but you can interpret stats a lot of different ways. The facts are, when Taylor Heinicke had that run against Tampa Bay, when he basically came in off a couch and battled Tom Brady and the Buccaneers in that playoff game, that was amazing. But right after that, in the offseason, after they did sign him to a deal, to a 2-year deal, they also signed Ryan Fitzpatrick to be the starting quarterback. It was not a competition, even though they said it was a competition. They gave him $10 million. Okay. So Ron said, that was awesome, Taylor, but I know what your limitations are. I'm bringing in Ryan Fitzpatrick. So Taylor had to play that year only because Fitzpatrick got hurt. Then he has this okay year. I don't know what his quarterback record was that year, but they went into the offseason again and they said, okay, Taylor, you're not the guy. We're going to go out and trade for a very iffy Carson Wentz. Okay? So again, they chose somebody over Taylor Heinicke. And the only reason he played is that Carson Wentz got hurt in that Chicago game. That's the only reason he played. Then they go into this offseason, and they made it very clear to everybody in the offseason that Sam Howell is the guy, or is at least going to have a shot to be the guy. So 3 consecutive years with Sam Howell, when Taylor Heinicke was available, this organization, Ron, whomever, they said Taylor Heinicke is not good enough to be our starting quarterback for an entire year and lead us to the playoffs. Those are the facts. You can have your love affair with him. I thought what he did was very inspirational, given his size and his lack of talent, his lack of arm strength. All of that was great. But he just wasn't good enough. He's just not good enough to be a starter. And as far as a backup, we've talked about a lot on this show, you can't have people screaming his name every time Sam Howell makes a mistake. It's not about whether Sam Howell can handle it. It's whether Ron Rivera can handle it. Ron Rivera hears those chants in the stands. Heinicke, Heinicke, right? He hears that. And he just doesn't want to have to deal with that. He doesn't want to have to deal with all the people you and I are dealing with now screaming for Heinicke.
The EP upstairs right now.
Right. The EPs of the world. He doesn't want to have to deal with that. Move on, get somebody who's a little bit better.
Just going to point out that Heinicke, 3 syllables, Jacoby, 3 syllables. You can just get that chant going already.
But he doesn't have the cult following that Taylor had because of what Taylor did.
He doesn't have the pizzazz, right? You know, we talk a lot about the moxie that Taylor Heinicke has.
Yeah.
And we saw it from Alcatone, I think had put in there as well, where it was a G. Like this, he was so lovable here, right? I mean, when you look at the off the field stuff, he was very lovable. On the field, he made a couple plays that were just like, yes, you know, JP Flame mentioned before the end of the game, the pylon. I imagine that's probably most people's memories of him. And by the way, I went back and rewatched that, not just a highlight of it, but like rewatched just the whole
play
sequence,
or the game,
the sequence, the drive. And man alive, was it electric. And you know what, one thing I forgot about it, mainly because I don't think they really show it when you watch just a highlight clip for it, is that was an empty stadium.
Oh,
that was
a home game because
it was a home game,
7 and 9.
It was a home game, but it was still an empty stadium. No, it was just an empty stadium because of no one was allowed at the games.
Oh, it was a COVID deal.
As a COVID game.
Okay.
Could you imagine that pylon dive where we were there? I mean, a 7-9 team probably still not going to be filled out, but I mean, this was to almost tie up the game at this point. So it was it was electrifying and it was great. And then we saw a couple other plays. His after Fitz went down, you know, we saw another, like he just won. It's the dive for the pylons. He did it again. You know, the following year, he had that pass for JD McKissick against Atlanta. You know, he's had a couple of these, you know, YOLO balls that get caught because you have Terry McLaurin out there. And so there's definitely some great things to remember from on the field, but I think a lot of it, and the reason why people are so tied to him, is because this is a guy who came from his sister's couch, to winning game checks and buying his offensive lineman Jordans.
Yeah.
Like that's a likable guy there. I mean, he was in the plane, all chained up and drinking beer.
Bush lights.
Bush lights, So just a likable guy. And so that's why I definitely, wish, him well there. Trey saying self-made man.
Yeah.
Gus Bus saying, I think Heinicke left as the most beloved since Doug Williams. Michael points out that there's not much competition in that regard. But what would be your, if it's not the pylon dive, what would be your favorite Taylor Heinicke moment?
Oh, wow. My favorite one, you probably get mad at me for this, but when he did the Lambeau leap, although he didn't score, right? When he thought he scored and he did the Lambeau leap and all that. And then they went back and reviewed it, and he actually fell down on purpose before he got to the goal line. And then they didn't score on that play, on that drive.
So mad about that.
And then they lost the game, I believe, by less than a touchdown.
It was kind of like he made there was another one just from last season where he could have cut and gone inside for a touchdown, but he kind of went for the pylon, but he crunched. Yeah. And because he crunched, he got tackled short. And it was just like, what are you doing? If you literally just go to the inside there, that's a freebie. And it was almost like he was geared to go for the pylon and then kind of shortchanged himself.
Yeah, right.
The Lambeau leap was a good one.
Yeah, there's a lot of that, but that was kind of a cheap shot at Taylor. But I mean, he had some plays that you would sit there and you say, well, why can't you do that consistently? And on certain plays that he would make, but he just never could. And he was the type of quarterback, and there's a lot of those in Washington, but he was the type of quarterback that when he dropped back to pass, you got scared. You were just worried at what might happen. As much as people didn't like Kirk Cousins around here, when he went back to pass, I thought good things were going to happen because I was confident in his ability to get the ball downfield and get to guys. Now he had turnover issues in his first couple of years, but he fixed those. But Heinicke, when he went back to pass, I was scared that something bad was going to happen every time. And that's just not a good thing. But he had a lot of the qualities that you need in a quarterback, and the players loved him. His teammates loved him. He was great in the locker room and all of that. He just didn't have the football talent, whether it was physical or mental. He just didn't have enough of it to be an every game quarterback in the NFL. And that's why he's making backup money.
You're really hard on him. This was supposed to be more of a loving affair here.
I can't come up with another big play because all the other big plays were made by other people. Like McLaurin.
I mean, it's still part of it, right? Even those YOLO balls, he's still a part of the play there. There was some escapability that he had. I agree with you that there was a certain amount of Taylor Heinicke. I got frustrated because I said this his first full year with us was every play looks like it was a broken play.
Yeah.
Like it was like nothing went as designed. It was like every time he was just like, it was like he was looking, if he wasn't looking to scramble, he was trying to scramble out and then make like this YOLO thing happen. Like he just was trying to play hero ball all the time.
Yeah.
And I think that the coaches caught on to that. And then they're like, no, we want you in the pocket. And then that kind of took away his best ability, right? Was kind of that, that gunslinger mentality. And you started to see some things, but I mean, to be fair, some of that worked out really well. Stoner. I mean, they beat the Bucks in 21 and where they just kept driving and he played efficiently. And there was things like that where maybe there wasn't a sexy play to go after. I know we're in the Manscaped segment here, but I mean, sometimes what's sexy is a 10+ minute drive where you're doing 21 plays. But I do have a play that I remember from just this last year that I loved.
All right.
Mainly because it got under the skin so bad of everyone else that wasn't in burgundy and gold. And it was the the penalty, the one that he got that he drew the penalty against the Eagles, and where he like slid, got hit, and immediately came up going, "Where is it?" They flew the flag, and he's like celebrating because it was the end of the game.
Yeah,
and he's just like, "That's it, that's it. You guys are done." Oh man, I love that. I love that I love that he slid. I love that he got hit, and immediately was just like, "No, where is it?" And then got so animated in their faces.
Yeah.
And that was great. That was absolutely just so good.
Was there ever a play that he made late in the game that he made, not that McLaurin made for him? Was there ever a play this year? Let's just say this year. I mean, if you can come up with last year too. I mean, my memory's not great, but I just can't think of any play that he made in this past year and a half or 2 seasons where you went, he put this team on his back and he won the game for him with some great throws when he had to. Because I can think of Green Bay, which was McLaurin. That was the YOLO ball that he threw with his eyes closed. I can think of Indy that he threw up there. That was McLaurin jumping over Stephon Gilmore, right? I mean, they were throws, but they were not like great throws that he made. So I was just trying to think of any, and I can't. I'm thinking of Atlanta the season before, late in the game.
J.D. McKissick pass.
McKissick made that play.
Oh, it's like a 60-yard run or something by J.D. McKissick.
Yeah, because he had to go all the way across the field. They had to make a couple guys miss, and then he flew, you know what I mean? So I just can't think of any plays that he made himself late in games that were difference. And so that's, you asked me the question, I can't come up with anything.
Yeah, I mean, it's fair. I think that you're a little down on him. I think that he's he's a bottom tier starting QB and an upper tier backup. And I hope for him the best in Atlanta. He might see some playing time there as Ritter is their QB, drafted in the 3rd round. You know, people want to, talk about how being a 5th round rookie, Ritter being a 3rd round rookie isn't that much of a difference. So, you might see Taylor Heinicke. Washington does play Atlanta this year. Do you think we see Taylor Heinicke? Do we have it's not here, actually. I think it's at Atlanta. Yeah, otherwise, I was going to ask you, is there a tribute video going to be played?
Yeah, right. That's going to be awesome if he's playing, though. That's going to be just so awesome. It's kind of like when Washington played Kirk Cousins, when Cousins came back here from Minnesota. So that's kind of cool. It sucks that Kirk Cousins won the game, right? But
I 100%. If Taylor Heinicke starts against Washington this year
and wins,
I am taking Taylor Heinicke.
What do you mean?
I will tell you right now.
Bet on him?
I would bet on Taylor Heinicke winning that game. I don't care that it's Atlanta. I don't care if they're winless at that point.
0-7.
Taylor Heinicke will lead the Atlanta Falcons to victory over Washington 100%.
But God bless him.
And then he'll buy burgundy and gold Jordans for himself and the offensive line.
Yeah. Well, now he might be able to afford to buy the Jordans for the whole team, because he only bought for the offensive line because he's like, look, I don't have that kind of money to buy for everybody.
Well, he was buying them because he got the game checks, and he got the game checks again this time.
Yeah, but he was only making base salary this year like $1.5 million. Over there, his base salary is going to be like $6 million, and then he's going to have all the other stuff on top. But God bless him for what he has accomplished to go, like you said, he was a backup in the XFL, right? He was a backup. Then he was on his sister's couch because he was giving up football, and he was going to go to college and get his degree and figure out what he's going to do from there when he got a call to go to Washington. And he's turned that into, probably by the time he's done, $40 million. Maybe not that. $30 million.
I said, and I really do hope this is the case. I want to hear that Taylor Heinicke's still in the league.
Yeah, 5 years.
10 years from now, 5-10 years from now, that he's still on a roster somewhere, pulling that Jace Daniel, that Chad Henne kind of check. somewhere like that. And so nothing but love from my side. Yep. Stoner had a little shade to throw. So I guess we're going to have to leave it at that. We do appreciate everybody jumping in the chat with us. Trey here, Michael, Tim, Gus Bus, tell me to burn all the onesies. No, not going to do it. I'm obviously still love Washington. I'm just saying that that's the likelihood of Taylor Heinicke beating us is just, it seems greater than not. Trout in there at Michael. I think EE is in the house as well. Shout out to you, Uptown Dre. Great comment from you on our video from Jason Wright yesterday. Uptown Dre, I was actually in the chat with the guys talking about that one, so we appreciate that. Alcatone, we appreciate you all. So thanks everybody who jumped in there, and we had good conversation with JP Flame. Let us know what you like about the new graphics. Glad that Stoner's microphone lasted the entire hour and a half. We're not going to keep them any longer, though. So we appreciate you. We're live every Wednesday. We got some more great content coming up here in the next coming weeks. So we appreciate everybody who likes this video, subscribes to the channel. And until next time,
Lamar's still out there.
Be a fan.